It's really great to see so many of you out here tonight for the HDR Scholarship Information Evening. We hear from a range of different people about what the process is to getting a scholarship for an HDR degree at Griffith University. Just a few housekeeping rules, if we could put our phones on silent. If throughout the presentation you're hungry or thirsty, there's still plenty of food and drink out the back of the room. Just be, quiet as you can. We will have more refreshments afterwards. And just so you all know, if you're missing something on the slide or it's going too fast for you, just take a breath, because I will be sending the entire slides to you on Monday. So you will get them all. It's not a big deal. You don't need to be taking crazy notes. Just be listening to our presenters. So have a great night, and I'll pass you on over to the Dean of the Griffith Graduate Research School, Sue Burners-Price.
Okay, so good evening everybody. So the format is I'm going to start off this presentation and I'm going to be telling you really about why you should do a high degree research at Griffith University. I'm also going to have the help of my colleagues here, who are the Deans research in each of the 4 academic groups. We'll have a question and answer session after that session. And then there will be a session on just scholarships, and we have Adam Jones, who's the scholarship coordinator here. And then we'll have a session on why do a PhD or a high degree. My colleague, Dr. Sharon Saunders, who's the director of the Griffith Graduate School, will get that presentation. And then there'll be an opportunity for them, if we haven't answered all the questions that you might have, to meet with individual group representatives and ask the specific question you have at that point. So in terms of this presentation, this is me. So the Dean of the Griffith Graduate Research School, which means I oversee all of the high degree research at the university. And so this part of the presentation, we'll be talking about research rankings, the types of research degrees. Then we'll talk about Griffith's academic groups. I'll pass over at that point to my colleagues. And then come back and talk about pathways of admission, the various ways you can get into a high degree by research degree. And then admission eligibility and fluency. And then we'll have a Q&A session. So, just to start off, it's always useful for me to know how many people here are already students at Griffith University. Whoa, nearly everybody. So just put up your hand if you have come from outside the university. Just a few. Welcome, you people. So I'm going to start off by talking about these wonderful people. So I call this our HDR community of early career researchers. And there was one submitted question, which is what is the difference to doing a PhD to doing an undergraduate, a bachelor or a master's degree? And so the difference is that you're actually doing original research as you do a high degree by research, so you're contributing to new knowledge. And as you can see from the slide where we're showing cross-section of early career researchers across the entire university, it's to give you the idea of the breadth of research that happens at university. So it's a large university, research intensive, and so research is happening in many different disciplines. So hopefully if you're looking at that slide, you can be inspired to say, oh yes, I can see that's an area that I can work in. Within the the wording we use throughout all of our policies, everything we write about in the Griffith Graduate Research School, we don't ever say student, we say candidate. And the reason we do that is just to emphasise this point that it is about a research training exercise. It's about being a community of early career researchers and learning how to do research. So we specifically don't use the word student in the language we use throughout our policies. So, you're from Griffith, so I don't really need to give you this hard sell about Griffith, but I'm passionate about Griffith University myself, so I like to pass that on. I actually started my academic career here in 1990. I was a chemistry lecturer in the School of Science here at the Nathan campus. I spent, I think it was 9 years here, and then I went to the University of Western Australia. And then I came back in 2009. I was actually the Provost Chancellor of the Griffith Sciences Group, and then I moved into this position of Dean of the Graduate Research School. And I came back to Griffith because I am very passionate about Griffith, because I believe in its mission. So it's a young university established only about 40 years ago. If you look at the back of this room, you can see photos from the 40th anniversary of Griffith. This was specifically for the School of Environmental Sciences at Griffith, so it's interesting when you take a break, go and have a look at those photos. So it was set up with a different mission to be different to the established university in Queensland at that time, the University of Queensland. So it was set up to have interdisciplinary schools rather than departments. So interdisciplinary research has always been what's happened at Griffith. Now that's really, really important, because nowadays everyone knows that interdisciplinary research is important. Universities are restructuring themselves to facilitate people being able to do interdisciplinary research to solve really, really big complex problems. But Griffith has always done it that way, which is why I think Griffith is such a great place to come and do a research degree. In terms of the size, so I have to look back at the slides here myself, but it's a large university now. So if you think it only started 40 years ago, it's 46,000 undergraduate students and an alumni network, 120,000 Griffith alumnus now. And research is what you're interested in. We have about more than 30 research centres and institutes across the university. And then 20 different schools across 5 different campuses. So you're here on the Nathan campus, we have the Mount Gravatt campus, the South Bank campus, the Logan campus, and the Gold Coast campus. So that's a massive university operating across these 5 campuses. So the higher degree research candidates, not students, the candidates, 1,900. So this is sort of the niche, the cream of the student body, if you like, and the ones that are really contributing to Griffith's research reputation. So in terms of supervisors, we have around 2,000 available supervisors for you, depending on what sort of research you're interested in doing. So in terms of rankings, I sort of briefly alluded to rankings. So if you think about only being 40 years old and then you're establishing a research reputation against universities that have been around for a lot longer, Griffith is really proud of the fact that we're really rising up those research rankings so that we're now in the top 3% of universities worldwide. So consistently across different rankings, and there are several different rankings, Griffith is clearly in that band of the top 350 in the world. And there is a special ranking for universities that are under 50, and Griffith's highly ranked in that ranking as well. And in terms of the breadth of research, I mentioned it's a research intensive university, and we have there's an exercise called the ERA exercise for looking at research quality, and then the last ranking, Griffith's research outputs, 98% submitted in fields rated at world standard above in those results across 50 different disciplines. Okay, so hopefully that's why you should come here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the types of research degrees. So we talk about higher degree by research. And so it refers either to a research master's or a research doctorate. And a research master's means a level 9 qualification as defined by the Australian Qualifications Framework, where a minimum of 2/3 of the program is research training and independent study. So there would be, can be a little bit of coursework in there, or it could be 100% research. And a research doctorate is a level 10 qualification under the Australian Qualifications Framework, and a minimum of 2 years of the program of learning, and typically 2/3 of the qualification is research. So types of research degrees. So there are the doctorates, A Doctor of Philosophy, otherwise known as a PhD, is 100% research. And then there are named Doctors of Philosophy, which is research plus some coursework. And there is a Doctor of Philosophy in Clinical Psychology and a Doctor of Philosophy in Organisational Psychology. And then there are professional doctorates, which are research plus some coursework. So the Doctor of Education, the Doctor of Musical Arts, and the Doctor of Visual Arts. And then for master's degrees, so Masters by Research, there's the Master of Philosophy, which is 100% research, so that's the direct equivalent of the PhD, which is 100% research. And then we have specialist Masters by Research degrees. So depending on the discipline you're interested in, there may be a Masters by Research that's of interest. So there's a Master of Arts Research, Master of Education and Professional Research Studies, Master of Medical Research, Master of Musical Research, Master of Science, and Master of Visual Arts. Okay, so I'm going to talk about entry requirements after we hear from the group representatives, because they can tell you more about the 4 academic groups, the types of research that's happening, and then I can come back and talk to you about entry requirements. So we're going to start off, and we will do them in the order of these slides are in, which starts off with Arts Education and Law. And so this is Professor Jerry Doherty, who's doing research in Arts Education and Law. Thank you, Jerry.
So as Susan said, I'm Jerry Doherty. I'm Dean Research in Arts Education and Law, one of the 4 groups at Griffith. So in Arts Education and Law, we cover a very wide range of the humanities, arts and social sciences. And we're organised, as you see on the slide here, on the left-hand side in 6 schools. So School of Criminology and Criminal Justice, School of Education and Professional Studies, School of Humanities, Languages and Social Sciences, Griffith Law School, Queensland College of Art, and Queensland Conservatorium. Our staff are also aligned to 6 research centres. I won't read all those titles. And those research centres work pretty closely with the schools, which are kind of disciplinarily aligned to them in terms of the areas that they cover and the expertise which they have. Our work is across all campuses in Griffith, less so at Logan, but we have a very strong presence at Nathan, at Mount Gravatt, South Bank and at Gold Coast. And so there are opportunities for you to do doctoral research at any of those campuses. And Logan too, if there are areas that connect with the staff that we have based there. All of our schools and research centres, I think it's fair to say, contain research which is of the top, most kind of highest international standing. And so we have fantastic senior researchers who've really made a name for many years in their fields. But we also have outstanding early and mid-career staff who are really kind of blazing the trail in their fields of research and doing fantastic work. And the opportunities to work with staff of that calibre is really second to none, really, I think, in the fields that we have expertise in. We have around 500 doctoral candidates within the group, so it's a very large cohort of students. And in many cases, they form really neat clusters kind of within the discipline areas or within the research centres that they're based with. We have, amongst that cohort of students, we have people who are studying kind of topics which fall neatly within a single discipline. There are people doing work on literature or history or linguistics. But we also have people who are working in a very cross-disciplinary kind of domain. And I think one of the beauties of Griffith is it really does present the cross-disciplinary possibilities much more easily, I think, than many other institutions where academics tend to find themselves very siloed within traditional discipline kind of entities. Griffith has always really tried to foster multidisciplinarity and the possibility for working outside of traditional constraints. And I think that's something we're very good at. And a lot of our doctoral candidates take up that opportunity with relish in their own studies. So I'll be happy to kind of answer any questions on that later. I would highlight that we have a large number of students who are working within the areas of creative practice, so relating to music and fine art, design, creative writing. And we are one of the most experienced outlets within this country to work with students who want to create a doctoral project on the back of a significant piece of creative practice. And so that's something where we've got a lot of experience and expertise, and where we're really keen to kind of work with people who are thinking of working in those sorts of areas, designing and helping them think through what their project would look like. One thing we have, which I'm sure you'll hear about from others today as well, each of our schools has an HDR candidate convener. So this is somebody who has responsibility for shepherding our candidates through their doctoral research. But one particular role we have for those conveners is in acting as a broker between people who are interested in doing doctoral research and potential supervisors. So in AL, we like to think you're not kind of left alone to kind of find a supervisor somehow. We will invite you, if you're interested in talking to us, to contact the convener within the school that would be best suited to your interests, and the convener will help you make contact with the people who might be best placed to provide you with supervision. So for me, that's a really critical role in facilitating people who are at your stage of thinking of what opportunities lie within the arts education law group, and how you might pursue those conversations with staff who may well be interested in providing that supervision for you. And I'll leave it there because I'm sure I've got enough more time. Thank you.
Sang is the Dean Research Group of Sciences.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Can I just get an idea of people, who's here that's interested in sciences, engineering, computing? You just put your hand up. Okay, I think it's good, around about 40%. Okay, well, I've got a bit of a confession to make before I start. I'm actually a Griffith alumni, so I'm a Griffith graduate, and it's a fantastic place to come and study science. In fact, when I finished here, I went off to Germany and postdoced in a place called, or an institute called Max Planck Institute for Quantum Optics, and basically did specialised laser research. I'm a quantum physicist. And I had the opportunity to come back and with an Australian Research Council fellowship. And the reason why I came back to Griffith is because it had the specialised facilities and the actual people that were the best in Australia to work with. And I think this is one of the great things about coming to study with Griffith Sciences. You'll see that the significant amount of money that the university's put into research has been around sciences, and it's actually brought in some of the best people in the world. I'll just tell you something a little bit about the group. We've got around about 350 academic staff, about 6,000 students within the group, and of them, there's roughly around about 600 PhD students. I like to think of us as the research engine within the university. That's not true because my colleagues over here will disagree with that, but we bring in 50% of the university's research income, so we're pretty high performing when it actually comes to that. Or I should say all of our students are enrolled through 4 large schools, which are listed up there: the School of Natural Sciences, the School of Environment, the School of Engineering, and the School of Information Computing Technology. And as you can see, that those schools are pretty diverse. They're located over 3 campuses, and the research that's actually carried out is mainly conducted within the research centres or associated research centres with those schools. And we have 10 of those research centres and institutes. That research is pretty diverse. It varies from things such as big data, cybersecurity, aviation, climate change adaptation, human evolution. It's actually a fairly new area in our group. We've published in that group in human evolution around 10 papers in Nature in the past 2 years. One of those papers in Nature was cited as one of the top 10 science discoveries last year. And this ranks alongside of some pretty amazing science discoveries. So, to give you an example, as a physicist, I was pretty excited to see that gravitational waves were first detected in a special type of interferometer last year. This is something that was predicted by Einstein. And yet we have another piece of research with human evolution, and this is looking at the origins of our Indigenous Australians. And it was pretty impactful because this research, not only the scientific side was pretty interesting, but the societal component. There's been some debate with regards to the Australian Constitution in putting in Indigenous Australians, Aboriginal Australians as the first Australians. And there have been comments from politicians asking that, how do you know that that's the case? Well, now we have scientific evidence, and so there's no argument about that. And so that's pretty important, not only in terms of that scientific discovery, but to the Australian Aboriginals. With our research, we research around jellyfish. We've just signed up an interesting deal with SeaWorld, where we're going to get some new saltwater tank research, and we're actually assisting them to design up a new jellyfish display, but equally we're actually going to put in research laboratories there. So when people actually go into SeaWorld, it's changed from a place which actually has a collection of animals to an education place and about conservation, and this will be a display around jellyfish, the importance of jellyfish in the ecosystem, and equally people will be able to participate in the experiments down there, and I think that's sort of something really interesting. Stem cell research, I'm not sure if people are aware, but the Australian of the Year was Alan Mackay-Sim, who came from Griffith Sciences. His research was around using nasal stem cells to implant them into people's spine to assist them to walk again. He didn't actually do that component, but what he actually proved was that it was actually safe to transplant these cells, which is a vital component in the research program to allow people to walk again. In fact, the state government's actually just given us around $5 million to continue on that research with James and John. So we also have unique facilities. We've got some pretty good toys. In my lab, I've got the Australian 82nd Science Facility. It's the only amplified laser system, or short pulse amplified laser system in the country. Produces pulses of light that have got 30 gigawatts, so each pulse of light that comes out has got more power than the US power grid. So we've got the only one here, and it's really great. I tried to make movies about how electrons move around atoms, and I tried to actually look at, for example, controlling chemical reactions with this, and we just published a nice paper in Nature Communications around that. We have things like, what's the other one that we have? We've got a full-scale industrial silicon carbide facility here for actually producing things like integrated chips or power chips. It's incredible. It's on this campus here. A lot of people actually don't really know that we have that. It's actually a full industrial scale facility. We also just invested in a new 3D metal printer, so for additive manufacturing. In fact, it's actually something that, I shouldn't say we invested in, the university invested in that. I'm sort of looking over the project to actually deliver the printing facility. In fact, but all our groups here together will actually collaborate on this project. And the idea is actually it's a prototyping facility. So industry can come in, think about some sort of design they might have around a component. In the case of health, for example, Dave will probably talked about, it might be a hip replacement, so bone replacements, or actually in the jaw. It could be in terms of furniture design, or something that you might think about in boats, for example. On the Gold Coast, they have a company called Riviera who make high-end boats in the order of between a couple $1 million up to about $10 million. They rely on specialised technicians to actually build components, because they're all custom built, and they've got orders out for about 3 years. And part of the reason for that is that they just don't have the capacity to build it because of these technicians they need. Well, you can actually print these up, actually, a lot of the things that you need. The real problem they've got is that they've got 3 years of orders, and I can tell you, if you have an economic downturn, the first thing goes on an executive list is the luxury yacht. So we're looking at ways to actually help them with their business. And so it's a great collaboration with industrial design and also business in terms of how you look at different business practices or disruptive business practices, such as this sort of technology brings to you. So if you're interested in any of those projects, and there's a huge number, the best way to go is actually look into the research page of the university, and you'll see the centres listed there. Each of the centres will have projects listed on there for their students. It also will list the staff. The best way to actually to look at undertaking a project in an area you might be interested in is actually to contact the staff. Send them an email, they'll certainly respond. They love talking about their research, and I'm sure they'd like to talk to you about a PhD program. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see who's next. Griffith Business School, so that's Professor Andrew O'Neill.
Thanks, Sue. G'day, everyone. As Sue said, my name's Andrew O'Neill. I'm a professor of political science, but my role is Dean of Research in the Griffith Business School. I finished my PhD, not at Griffith, but it was a long time ago, in 1999, at another institution in Australia. When I finished my PhD, I went not into academia, I went into government and spent some time there working in the capability and development and intelligence area in the Department of Defence, which is the single largest department in the Australian Commonwealth Government. I came back to academia shortly after that stint in the Commonwealth Public Service, and I came to Griffith in 2010 to take up a role as a Research Centre Director, the Griffith Asia Institute Director role. Subsequent to that, I headed a school, the School of Government and International Relations, and since April last year I've been in the current role that I'm in now. So the Griffith Business School has around 11 to 12,000 students enrolled. We've got around about 230 staff in our faculty, in our school. We call ourselves a school, but we're actually a faculty, a group. And we've got round about 200 high degree research candidates, give or take. So while we're not as large as science in terms of scale, we certainly take the high degree research experience very, very seriously. The overwhelming majority of the high degree research candidates we have are PhD candidates. We have one or two master's candidates, but really the primary focus of what we do in the high degree research area is research doctorate degrees. There are two things I want to tell you about the Griffith Business School. We're the best? No, I'm just kidding. We're one of 4 groups. That's true. The first thing I'd say is that we're not a traditional business school. So when people think of business schools or business faculties, they think of traditional business disciplines like accounting, economics, financial planning, etc., you know, the hardcore business disciplines. But what defines us is that we're more than a traditional business faculty, because we do have governments. My background is as a political scientist specialising in international relations, but I'm in a business school. So we have a broad range of disciplinary areas in the business school, and this is good for a few reasons. It's mainly good because we know that business interacts in a way with government that can be classified as hand in glove. So businesses often live or die, for example, by the sort of tax regime that governments introduce in Australia, overseas. We know, for example, the relationship between the public sector and the private sector is very close. Businesses depend to a large extent on public sector infrastructure investment to get the job done. So the relationship with government and business is really integral to the way our economy and society operates. So in that sense, the Griffith Business School is the kind of ideal place to reside if you're interested in how those relationships between government and business, and of course the not-for-profit sector, or the third sector, operate. The second reason why that kind of marks us out as being distinctive from a lot of other Australian universities in the business area, including local unis here, is that we pride ourselves on having a practical practitioner focus. So yes, we're interested in the high level kind of theory, but perhaps less so than some other institutions. We're actually interested in the practical implications of our research. What does it mean for businesses seeking to make a profit, to make an impact through corporate social responsibility, for example? What does all that mean for ordinary people trying to get their startups up and running? One of the ways we maintain that practical focus is by engaging deeply with our alumni, and we have significant alumni, like most business faculties around the world, from Harvard to wherever. Alumni really underpin a national and local engagement. So we really seek to leverage our alumni, our former students, many of whom are in high high-level positions in the business and government world, locally and internationally, effectively. Why is that important? That's important because we invite those alumni to come back in to the institution, and they contribute to the student learning experience, but also the experience for high degree research candidates. And again, that reinforces, you know, the practical dimension of what we do. We're not just sitting in an ivory tower, writing articles, winning grant income. We're actually out there interacting with business and government on a day-to-day level. And I think that's pretty exciting if you really think about it. So some of the areas I just want to bring your attention to. I'm not going to go through each one, obviously, on the list. My colleagues would probably kill me if I did that. But in terms of a couple of things I want to draw your attention to. In terms of rankings, tourism at Griffith was ranked number 2 in the world in the most recent, I think it was the Leiden or the QS rankings. We're ahead of UQ in tourism, and we're very proud of that. Outcome. Social marketing at Griffith is making a huge impact. Again, in areas as diverse from changing the dietary habits of Australian Defence Force personnel through to changing behaviours around drinking and so on. Political science in my area is ranked number 2 at Australia after ANU. So we're actually punching pretty well in terms of national and international rankings. And why is that important? Well, it's important because rankings are determined by how well you're doing in the research space. And that's important because high degree research candidates are embedded in our research endeavour. They're part of what we do in terms of our day-to-day research projects, and they're often embedded as part of those. And that's really important, and that's worth, I think, underscoring. So, you know, if you do decide to join us as a high degree research candidate, you can be sure that you're going to be a pretty intrinsic part of our research strategy and embedded into our culture of excellence. Just a final couple of points before I wrap up. So the other point I would make here is that our research is local, national and international. So the kind of 3 domains. We're not just focused on the local picture here in southeast Queensland. We're interested in the national picture, for example. Big issues around, so for example, taxation reform, the housing affordability crisis. Again, practically focused research questions. And the international, the global dimension as well. When you think about someone like Donald Trump, a classic example of someone who has come from the business world, but now is at the apex of government decision making. So the relationship between business and government is absolutely, as I said before, hand in glove, and we seek to understand that. And finally, I just draw attention to the point that we realise that not everyone who does a PhD or a high degree research program is going to want to be an academic. We realise that a lot of people who complete high degree research degrees, like I did when I finished my PhD, will not go into the academic world. They will go into other parts of the market, and we seek to give you the skills to equip you to be able to do that successfully, and also, of course, go into the academic world. But, you know, to hedge a bit, you may start off, for example, wanting to get into academia, but you change your mind as you go through your degree. So we aim to be adaptable and flexible, and to give you, I guess, the full suite of knowledge when it comes to career opportunities. So I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So last we have Griffith Health, and so this is Professor David Shaw, who's the Dean of Research in Health.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. Just want to let you know, my name is David Shaw. I was born and brought up in Hong Kong, and I came to Australia in 1985. I started work in the same year as Sue at Griffith University in 1990. I've never left. So I've been working as the Dean of Research in the Griffith Health Group since 2012, May 2012 to be precise. Now, can I start off my 5 minutes talk by asking, you know, who's sort of coming here tonight because you're interested in doing a PhD degree or HDR degree in the health and medical area? Nice, all right. How many of you have made up your mind already? How many of you have found a supervisor? Oh, in that case, I don't have to talk. No, sorry. No, so what I want to do is, like, you know, first congratulate you for your choice. I'm a bit biased, but I want to congratulate you. And I also got a present for you, for those of you who raised your hand before. I've got a nice postcard for you. Come and get one from me later, and also a little concertina business card. Now, that's the reason for that, because I think by giving you those things, actually, you can ask us questions. Now, we talk about, topics and so on. I don't have a lot of time to tell you what are the research topics, but if you're interested in a certain area, if you want to contact my office, we can point you to the direction of who you should talk to. We got some suggestions for you for supervisors. And also, if we can't find it, we can point it to the HDR conveners of the particular school. Okay? All right. So let me start now by telling you and say, look, in my 5 minutes, I'm not going to talk about specific areas, but instead, right, since some of you haven't made up your mind, you're interested, I want to tell you why you should come to Griffith to do health. All right? A few reasons. Right? I won't give you, a long list, but just a few reasons to highlight it. In terms of Griffith Health, right, we have more than 400 academic staff, research staff, who can help you to, deal with this health research. Now, so, it's a very important thing, you have made the right choice, a very important choice, because health problem is a significant one around the world, in many countries. Not just physical health, but also mental health. And I think, that's an urgent need, in all the countries, for scientific research to tackle that issue. And, I welcome, people to join the effort in Griffith Health to deal with that. Now, we have 400 staff, and, you have a lot of choices in terms of working with certain supervisors. You can find them on the web and so on. Now, in terms of number of HDR candidates, we have about 500. So we've got a big group, we're a big group. Now, the thing is like, having a large, number is not necessarily good, it's just big, but I think we're also very important in terms of our quality as well. So we talked about ranking before. So there's a thing called the ERA ranking. This is a system conducted by the Australian government, excellence research in Australia. So how did we do? So this is ranking from 1 to 5, right? 5 is the best, 1 is the lowest, right? So in terms of medical and health sciences, Griffith Health ranked 4. Dentistry, 5. Nursing, 5. Human movements and sports sciences, 4. Oncology and carcinogenesis, 4. Social work, 4. So we got some really high ranking, high quality research. Now, the other area that I'm very proud is also our nursing research. Our nursing research is not ranked number 2, we're not ranked number 2. We're ranked number 14 in the world. Not as good as tourism, but I think we rank very high in the world, ranking 14. And I think, we've got some really, really good nursing researchers. So, other things I want to let you know about, why to give you more reasons. And I think like Sue and other people that talked about before, our PhD or HDR candidates, right? Sometimes, they don't just got supervised by one supervisors in one school. That's a lot of, multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary researching, supervision going on. So we have people from one school, one supervisor, and another from another school. And that doesn't have to be in the same health group as well. So we have people from the health group being supervised by one person in the health group, another person in the arts, education, and law group, or the science group, or the business group. So that's quite common. It really depends on the research question. Sometimes you do need that input from the other expertise as well. So that's another reason. Now, the other thing that I want to emphasize as well, we are the health group, right? So to do health research actually is not that easy, because you can't just stay in the laboratory. For some health research, you need to go into the community. Yeah. So in the Griffith Health Group, we have a very good relationship with the hospital and health services, in the southeast Queensland. So on the Gold Coast campus, we have a hospital, the Gold Coast University Hospital, right next door to us, less than 5 minutes. So, that really facilitates collaboration and research. But not just the Gold Coast, but, in Brisbane, we have very good relationship with the PA Hospital, Royal Brisbane Hospital, Mater Hospital, Logan Hospitals, and so on. I think that's very important, for that kind of research to be happening. A lot of our researchers actually have conjoined appointments between the hospitals and also the university as well. Now, and then finally, I think I'll give you the best reason why you should come to Griffith Health to do your HDR research. Is we got some extra scholarships. So let me tell you about some of the extra scholarships, right? So in Griffith Health, we have what we call a top-up allowance scholarships. So this one, you don't have to apply, right? So basically, if you applied at the end of this year, for the scholarship, we'll look at people's ranking, and we will give that scholarship, that extra top-up scholarship, to the top 3 people. And this is an extra $10,000 a year for 3 years. Okay, so that's one. Now there's another scholarship called the Center for Research Excellence in Prostate Cancer Survivorship Scholarship. Now why did we set up that scholarship? Because one of our researchers, she was successful in getting a big grant from the National Health and Medical Research Council, and she decided to use part of that grant to support a PhD scholarship. So with that, you can actually find out about the information of those scholarships on our webpage. And I think Adam will talk a bit about that as well. All right, so and another scholarship is called the Department of Aboriginal and Torres Straits Islander Partnership Scholarships. So that one, there are 2 scholarships there. One for Aboriginal people with Aboriginal background, one for Torres Strait Island background. So this is, for 2 particular topics that we want to address in terms of, I'm not sure whether you heard about the Protection Act, and also this is similar, basically it's like the control of wages and savings in people with those backgrounds. And I think that actually is sponsored by the particular department in the Queensland government for research projects in those areas. So, if you're interested in that, come and talk to me, but it has to be, for people in that background, with that background, one for Aboriginal background, one for Torres Strait Islander background. And finally, we have another top-up scholarship called a Human Services and Applied Economics PhD top-up research scholarship. Now that one you have to apply. So that's again, $10,000, top-up every year for 3 years, but you have to apply, for that particular scholarship. All right, so I think that's the end of my little presentation, but just remember, come and get those little presents from me later. All right, thank you.
Okay, so thank you, colleagues. That was really helpful, I think, for everyone to get a really good overview of all of the research that happens across the university. And you can see my colleagues, that as the Dean Research of those academic groups, they're very committed to supporting the high degree research candidates, the research that's happening in the groups, and you can see they're all really approachable, friendly people as well, which is good. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the entry requirements. And so I'm going to be talking about the entry requirements for admission, which is not the same thing as for scholarship. So after this session, Adam Jones, who's the scholarships coordinator, will talk about the requirements for scholarships. What do you need? We define what you need really in terms of the Australian Honours degree, which has a research component, and at Griffith, that research component is 40 credit points, which is equivalent to a full-time semester of research. So that's what we base our entry requirements on. So you can have done a master's degree if you've not done honours, a coursework master's degree, and provided that that coursework master's has a 40 credit point research component, then that is also, you'd also be eligible for entry, so long as you have appropriate grades. So, if you want to go into a doctoral program, the level of achievement is Honours 2A or above. And that requires a distinction grade for the thesis component and an overall GPA of 5.5. So, to go into a master's, you need to be Honours 2B equivalent. So there is no distinction between the research component that's needed to do a PhD or an MPhil. They both require the 40 credit point research, but the level of achievement is lower for an MPhil, so you need Honours 2E, not Honours 2A. You're going to get all of these slides, and there's a link there to the degree and career finder, so there might be specific entry requirements for a specific one of the programs, which would be indicated there. So Honours 2B equivalence, if you've not done an Honours degree, what does that mean? It's equivalent to a overall GPA of 5 with a 5 for the research component. What else do you need? So if you're an international applicant and English is not your first language. You need to demonstrate English language proficiency and using IELTS, that's a 6.5 or equivalent with no subscore less than 6. Other documentation you need to supply on your admission is residency status, a research proposal. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the research proposal when we get to the Q&A session, because there are some questions around that. You'll need also to provide referee reports, academic referee reports. So these have to be from people who can really talk about you as a potential researcher, so not from your next door neighbour or somebody like that. And then sometimes there are special conditions around confidentiality or IP, depending on if you are coming in with a project when you had IP to bring in, for example. Okay, so this is a fabulous diagram. It took us ages and ages and ages to put this together. And you can't obviously read it on this slide, or even in the slides when we send them out to you, but you can find it on our website. And so what it allows you to do is sort of click on what qualification you have and what your options are to get into the degree of your choice. So hopefully you'll find that useful, because it's not like you might be saying, I don't have a 40 credit point research component. That's okay, there's probably a pathway in for you. I'm going to talk a little bit about those pathways. So we have in a few areas what are called graduate diploma of research studies, and so they are a pathway program to either a doctoral program or a master's program for applicants who do not have the required qualifications for admission, and often that means not having the 40 credit point research component. So there are one-year programs which give you the research component, and depending on the discipline, there may well be research methodology training in that particular discipline. So I won't read them out, but you can see they do cover all academic groups and many different disciplines. So there may be one in there that would be applicable. So just some questions you might be thinking about. So if you've completed a bachelor's degree, which is an AQF level 7 qualification, or a master's coursework, which is AQF level 9, or a graduate certificate, graduate diploma, AQF level 8, that does not contain the 40 credit point research component, what can you do? There are things you can do. You could do a bachelor with honours degree. So that's the traditional entry way that you can get in. You could just do that honours, 1-year honours degree. You could do one of those graduate diploma research studies I showed you. Or you could do a postgraduate coursework program which had a 40 credit point research component. If you're applying for a professional doctorate, I showed you those at the beginning, there will be specific admission requirements for those programs for establishing equivalence. Again, we point you to the website where you can find the detailed admission requirements for those programs. And for those specialist master's research programs I showed you at the beginning, they have their specific admission requirements which you would need to check. So if you're interested in one of those programs, you know, the Dean's research here will be able to answer specific questions you might have around those programs. So then you may have a situation where you don't have an honours or a master's degree, but you've got a combination of academic qualifications, research outputs and research experience. Now, if you can provide evidence of that research that you've done, and the evidence needs to be in a form that you can show to us that having that experience is equivalent to having done that research component in one of those degrees. So then you would put forward an equivalency case. You would have to demonstrate it really based on that you had research outputs in terms of publications. It can't just be, I did 6 months of research. We would have to see the outcomes of the research that you've done. But there is this way in. It's not that that you would say, no, you can't come. We actually evaluate every single case on a case-by-case basis against our admission requirements. Also, it's possible that if you're in the creative area, you may have a creative work or performance, for example, or research grants. All of these things you can find in our HDR policy. It's all very clearly documented in there, and the link to that is here on this slide. Okay, so Q&A session. I'm going to start this because I had some pre-submitted questions, and I've been sort of ticking off on these as we've gone along to make sure that they've been covered. But I am going to take these ones which really relate to the research topic and the research proposal. And there's two here, and I'm going to get my colleagues, I'm going to ask them to answer these questions as well, so you can think about this. And one is, question, how did your research question present itself to you? And I'm struggling to come up with my research topic. Another one is about doing a double major master's. Do I pick one discipline or must I do both? So these are, and I can see you're sort of struggling to understand how you can develop this research proposal that you need to put forward to do one of these degrees. I can see people nodding yes, so we're touching a good point here. Okay, so I'm going to answer this question in a certain way, which is do something you're passionate about. That's my number one point, because that's the advice that was given to me when I was at this stage. I did a degree in the UK, a long time ago now. It was called a Bachelor of Science with Honours, but it was actually a 3-year degree, which just had tiny little research projects in the 3rd year. So I had absolutely no research preparation. And it was really daunting to know what to do. So I wrote to people in the area, my area of bio and organic chemistry, because I'd done that and I was interested in it. And I had a few different offers, and one of them was at the University of Oxford, and I thought, oh, this would be good, I'll go to the University of Oxford. But I got really great advice, and that was do something you're really passionate about. And I wasn't so interested in that project at Oxford University. I was really interested in the topic that I did with my supervisor at the University of London, which was on actually gold anti-tumour agents at the end of the day. But you need to be passionate about that topic to sustain you through the research journey. So when you're thinking about what it is that I'm going to do, that's the number one thing to think about. I think in terms of research preparation, why we say you need that 40 credit point research project is because that will help you to be thinking about what it is you want to do next. But I'm going to now pass over to my colleagues to answer those questions. I mean, how did your research question present itself to you? Andrew, this is a question from...
And I'll get a microphone.
You get a microphone because it's being recorded, we might not hear otherwise. Yeah.
Look, I think Sue's absolutely right around the passion. I think that is important. Well, that's what's it. Sue's absolutely right around the passion. I mean, you know, in a PhD candidature, particularly, you know, you will have low days. You will have days where you have doubts, and in some cases serious doubts about the viability of the project. But if you're excited about the project intrinsically, you wake up in the morning after having, you know, a previous day you haven't been very productive and you're still excited about the project, that's a great sign. And Sue's right, that can sustain you throughout the candidature. The second, perhaps more pragmatic advice I would give is that, you know, this is getting harder and harder as time passes because there's more and more research. But you know, try and, if you can, pick a niche area, pick an area that perhaps hasn't been done, or if it has been done, you can bring a new perspective to. I think that's really important. Make sure it's significant. Make sure that it is going to make a contribution to the field of knowledge. but also has potential applicability in a practical sense, especially if you're thinking about not going into academia and finishing a PhD. And finally, pitch it to your family, pitch it to your cat, pitch it to supervise, just make sure you get your ideas out there and you get feedback and also that you're open to change. I think that's the really, not too much change, right, when you decide you go for it. But you've got to be, I think, go into this with a relatively open mind. I think that's really important too.
Anyone thinks?
Anyone
Anyone.
like to speak?
Yeah, well, I'd endorse all of that, I think. I did my PhD in the 1980s, even before service. There was a time when I lived in the UK. I actually ended up being very self-reliant due to a situation around my supervision which weren't ideal, from which I learned an awful lot, and which has actually influenced the way in which I try and have oversight over the supervisory practices we have within which I think are really very good. But I think a couple of things. Certainly, something you're passionate about for sure. I think something which I've been very open to having a dialogue at very early stages before you even enroll with supervisors to bounce ideas past potential supervisors, because I think if you can get a good alignment between the things you're passionate about and the things that a supervisor is also passionate about, that takes you a long way down the track of giving you confidence that you're in the right place, that this is something which will work for you. And I think I'd also suggest you don't get locked into something from the outset and think this is the way it's going to have to be right the way through, because ideas evolve and plans evolve and things develop as you get into a topic, into a theme. What might seem like a good idea at the point of applying for a PhD, for example, 6 months into that might seem either over ambitious or there might be something else that emerges which really grabs your attention even more than that original idea. So it is a bit of an evolving process in that early stage of candidature. And I think you just need to be ready for that to happen, not get too phased by that, because that's a fairly natural part of being a doctoral student.
Thanks, Jerry. Actually, it was interesting, Andrew, you said about pitching to your cat. I was going to say, look at Schrodinger, his cat ended up dead and alive. So, a PhD topic, I think my colleagues are absolutely correct. You want to do something that you're absolutely passionate about, because there are hard times at a PhD. It starts off as something that's sort of nice. You're getting to learn a lot of things, and remember that what you're doing is something that nobody else has ever done before. So it's not easy. So you're going to come across problems that nobody solved before. So it's sort of interesting. You don't get to do that in things like rarely you would get to do that in, say, undergraduate degrees. Sciences are a little bit different, I think, probably to what arts and business would be in terms of defining your topic. It's almost virtually impossible to really define a topic in the sciences that would be, I think for most people with their background knowledge, the volume of knowledge they have, to be specialised enough to actually pick a topic that is unique and could solve something that's actually impactful. I shouldn't say that not everyone could do that, but very few people would be able to do that from actually just completing an honours degree. So it's really important that you actually think about what topic you think is really impactful, something that's really going to interest you, and then find a person that researches in that area. I was lucky when I did this. I was pretty interested in experimental atomic physics, and I was lucky enough to have a very good group here where I could actually talk to a couple of people, and they helped me to really define my project. And it's kind of interesting, a PhD in science. It's almost like an apprenticeship. You work really closely with your supervisor, and you define this topic, and almost invariably, when you actually start this project, it ends up being a little bit different, because science is like that. It's very hard to predict what you don't know. So the things evolve, and that's what research is about, actually. So it's something that you've got to bear in mind, that the outcome that you might think, what you originally postulate, may not be the outcome. So I think that's really interesting. I think the other thing is, because you have such a high reliance on the supervisor, it's really important to do that background, I think, research around who you're going to choose. Because you're going to spend 3 years of your life with this person. you want to make sure, first of all, that they're really competent at doing this job, and secondly, that they have a clear idea about how the project's going to go, because I think it's really important to be complete, timely. I think that ensuring you have a supervisor that has some experience around this, and they don't have to be an older supervisor, more mature supervisor. It actually turns out that we have a lot of young ECRs who have really good ideas about where they're going and have great niches. In fact, as Andrew had mentioned, choosing an area where you know that they're an international player is really important, or a national player around this sort of thing. So my advice is to look at the topic you're interested in, choose a really good supervisor, and make sure they have the resources to enable you to do your project. And the rest is up to you.
I want to reinforce what Jerry said before. I think it's very important for you to work with the potential supervisor. Because, you might be able to come up with something that you think is a brilliant project, topics and research questions and hypotheses. But, no one sort of really understands, and they're not interested in doing what you propose to do. Then you ended up not having a supervisor. And if you haven't got a supervisor, you can't really apply. Yeah? So I think it's very important you find that, right? Now, the other point is, I think, for a topic, it's okay to start with a big idea or general idea, because, the potential supervisor will help you to refine. Now, let me illustrate that, for you using my own case. Now, I'm a neuropsychologist. After I finished my honors degree, I was really interested in a very significant topic at that moment. Now, it's like people with head injury. The number of people with head injury and the effects of head injuries on their life. Yeah, I was interested in one particular problem. People, always complain that they have problems in paying attention. They can't concentrate. And I said, look, I really want to do that particular project in that particular area. And being someone from Hong Kong, I have a very practical kind of way of thinking. So I said, I want to cure that problem. I want to treat that problem. Yeah. And I said, look, I went to my potential supervisor and said, look, this is what I want to do. This is the topic. I'm not going to change, right? But then he convinced me. I changed. Why is that? Because he told me some very simple logic. In fact, in the literature at that time, we don't even understand what's the nature of attentional problems in those people. So how can you treat those problems without really understanding the nature? So instead I stepped back one step and sort of decided to look at the nature and the types of attentional problems. And it turned out that it's more complex than I think. And attention is not just a unitary construct or concept. There are different types of attention, and not all of them are equally impaired in people with traumatic brain injury or head injury. So I think that's an example. Now let me add a few things to guide you as well. Would be easier for you to remember, right? So one thing you need to remember, a PhD research project is different from an honors project, or maybe to a certain extent a master project. We're looking for some original contribution to knowledge. Yeah? So you don't want to just do whatever someone has published in a journal paper. You don't want to just repeat that. You can do that for an honors project, but not for a PhD. So you have to keep that in mind. Now, so my advice is, first, right, not too big, not too small. Right? You don't want to, you try to solve the world's problem, but you need 7 years to do that, and you only have 3.5, 4 years to do it. So I think you can be guided by the potential supervisor on that. Not too small, you need to make a significant contribution. Yeah? And the other thing is, not too hot and not too cold. If it's too cold, that means it's not worth doing. No one's touching it because it's passé, right? Not too hot because a lot of people are working in that area, and it's very difficult to find a new angle about what's happening. And I think actually this is one of the training for a PhD. Because later on, after you get a PhD, you sort of get into academia. That's your skill to really think about a new research topic. Yeah. So because you just finished one project, but you need to do other projects, and then you have to guide your students to do that kind of project. So I think that's something to think about. Original, not too big, not too small, not too hot, not too cold.
Excellent. Well, I hope that was all really helpful, because there was different perspectives on answering that same question. There's just one more question here I'm going to answer, which is, if the work is across disciplines, how do you find a supervisor outside of your own area? So we've heard about approaching supervisors and how they can guide you, but just to let you know, there is something called Griffith Experts, which has the research expertise of all of the academics in the university. So it's quite useful. You can just put in keywords and you can then identify people who are working in certain areas. I'm just conscious of the time here, Kelly. Should I move on? So what we're going to do, rather than taking general questions from you now, hold your question at the end. You can come and talk to any one of us with your questions. So I'm just going to now move on to the part you've all been waiting for, which is the part around the scholarships. So I'll move on to, okay, this will be on the next slide. This is Adam Jones. He's the scholarships coordinator in the Griffith Graduate Research School.
Thanks, Sue. Yeah, that's me, Adam Jones, scholarships coordinator. And I'll be talking to some of the detail and practicalities, I guess, around the scholarship programme at Griffith. I think we might be a little behind schedule, so I'll talk to the slides reasonably quickly just to make sure that there is time at the end for questions, as Sue said, and perhaps some individual conversations as well. Before I talk about scholarships, I'll talk about tuition fees, just to make sure everyone in the room understands the state of play there. So the good news, I guess, is for domestic candidates, where there are no fees payable because they're covered by the Australian Research Training Programme domestic fee offset, a catchy title, with a contribution from Griffith as well. And the bad news, I guess, would be for any international candidates where fees are payable unless you've got a tuition fee scholarship. The exact fees would depend on your specific area of enrolment. They do vary from element to element. Three main types of scholarships. Living allowance scholarship, which is paid as a fortnightly stipend. The tuition fee scholarship for international candidates, and top-up scholarships as well. So I'll speak to those in a bit more detail as we go through the slides. The two primary scholarships that we award at Griffith for the living allowance scholarships are the Australian Government RTP Stipend Scholarship and the Griffith University Postgraduate Research Scholarship. The difference is one is funded by the Commonwealth and one is funded by Griffith. But outside of that, they walk the same and talk the same with the same values, same conditions and same responsibilities. Tuition fees, the other scholarship I might just flag there is the Indigenous Scholarship, which is available obviously to applicants who identify as Indigenous Australians. We've also, and again, that's the benefits and the conditions are the same, but the entry requirements for that are a little bit lower. So if anybody here that's relevant to, that's important to note. And we've also just launched an Indigenous top-up scholarship at Griffith as well. They'll be awarded alongside that. We bring the value for that scholarship up to $36,000 a year, and the RTP and the GUPRAs are $26,000. Tuition fee scholarships, again, we've got those scholarships funded by the Australian Government, so the RTP Tuition Scholarship and the Griffith University International Postgraduate Research Scholarship. So again, the only difference is where that funding comes from, and again, only obviously relevant to international candidates. You don't need to apply for those scholarships separately if you are international. If you're awarded a living allowance scholarship, you'll also be awarded a tuition fee scholarship for the same period of time. Can I just get a sense maybe of how many international applicants we've got in the room? So quite a few, so that's obviously important information to note. As well as covering the tuition fee scholarships, they also have a generous contribution to your overseas health cover. So the scholarships are awarded for 3 years in the first instance, but the overseas health cover is actually covered in full for 3.5 years, with you making a contribution just to the end period for the visa length cover. Top-up scholarships are awarded alongside the main living allowance scholarship and are generally funded, with the exception of that Indigenous scholarship I mentioned, generally funded either by the group, the element, or possibly some external opportunities. So the opportunity to apply for or be awarded a top-up scholarship may vary depending on your sort of area of enrolment and what's available locally. There are a number of additional scholarships offered through Griffith. A lot of these would, I guess, apply to people once you've started your PhD candidature. The main examples would be a conference travel grant scheme, which you can apply for through the Griffith Research School, which is a contribution to help candidates attend international conferences. There's a completion scholarship, which if you haven't started yet may seem like a long way off, but as you get towards the end of your research, it's a scholarship you can apply for to help you get over the line as you come towards thesis submission. And we've also got a publication assistance scheme. So this is actually for people at the very end of their candidature who, as they submit their thesis, maybe want to stay on and do a little bit of work on publishing some of the work that comes out of their thesis. And there's an opportunity for funding there as well. Key selection criteria. So Sue talked about criteria for entry to a PhD, and as she mentioned, it's slightly different for applicants applying for a scholarship. In simple terms, the entry requirements to PhD or research are H2A. For scholarship consideration, generally speaking, candidates would be expected to achieve H1. The detail of this is outlined, as Sue said, in our scholarship policy under selection criteria, but that's, I guess, the key takeaway here, except for, as I said, any Indigenous candidates applying for an Indigenous scholarship. The other ranking criteria, again mentioned in the HDR policy, is listed there, some of the highlights. I won't go through them all, but the fit of the research team, the ranking of the institution where you've done your previous qualifications, that's all taken into account, and as Sue said, each application is looked at very closely. It's a thorough assessment process, and applications are ranked, scholarships awarded accordingly. In terms of equivalency, so as Sue said, you can, if you haven't got the traditional background, if you like, you can demonstrate your equivalency for meeting entry requirements, exactly the same for showing that you meet that Honours 1 criteria. So, just as Sue said, if you don't necessarily have the straightforward academic evidence for H1, again, evidence of performance or research background, whatever that may be. Some of these scholarship benefits and conditions. So generally speaking, we'd ask people to have a full-time enrolment. You'd be expected to be based on campus, so an on-campus enrolment. And there are restrictions on the amount of employment you can undertake if you are in receipt of one of those scholarships. It's 9 hours a week, actually, between sort of business hours, 9 to 5. Entitlements as well, though, very generous. Up to 12 weeks paid sick leave, in addition to the tenure of the scholarship. You've got maternity leave benefits, parenting leave, a relocation allowance is included in both of those scholarships, and all that information is detailed in the conditions of award available on the website. The current scholarship round is open, has been open for a couple of months now, and applications close on the 3rd of October. So, what's that, about 5 or 6 weeks away already. So it goes quick, it feels like the last one just finished. Late applications aren't accepted, so 3rd of October deadline is a 3rd of October deadline, and for any international candidates, that's for any supporting evidence as well. So a key one mentioned there would be English language proficiency. I might just speak briefly to any current research candidates. Do we have any current research candidates in the room? So a couple. If you are already enrolled in a research program, you can apply for scholarships. Fall into 2 categories. So anybody within their first 12 months can apply as a new applicant, essentially. They go into the same bucket, if you like, as new applicants and are assessed alongside them. If you've been here for more than 12 months, but less than 2 years, and have been confirmed, you can still apply. We have what we call the Continuing Student Scholarship Scheme, and that's a slightly different process. You need to get an expression of interest in the first instance. So I won't go into any more detail than that, but if somebody falls into that category, feel free to speak to me at the end of the presentations. There are additional scholarship opportunities as well. These come in different shapes and sizes and may become available to you in different ways. The best place I would suggest to look is the Griffith Graduate Research Scholarships page, where current opportunities will be advertised, but they could come to you locally as well, excuse me. Some obvious examples would be government-funded scholarships or industry-funded scholarships. So some examples of this year: Brisbane Roar have given us a scholarship, Children's Hospital Foundation, Prince Charles, Department for Science and Technology, into military research that Andrew was talking about, so a number of opportunities. Excuse me, it's that time of year, Becca. Thanks. Okay, some brief tips on applying for scholarships. So check that you meet the selection criteria, so do have a look at the HDR scholarship policy, the exact areas mentioned on our website. Make sure the application is complete, and keep up to date with those scholarship opportunities I mentioned. You apply online. This is what it looks like. It's not active, I'm afraid, so I can't sort of show you live. Thank you very much. Am I still struggling? Is that 40-day habit? I don't. And then some important contact details at the end. So obviously the Griffith Graduate Research School webpage, and a phone number there, and a number of email addresses where we can answer your inquiries. Now, put me out of my misery and ask me some questions, please. Of course there is, sorry, I'm still going. Just the two, thankfully. When will scholarship recipients be notified? So as Sue said, it's a thorough assessment process that we go through. And so for this round, the round closes October the 3rd. Outcomes will be notified first. Oh, the anticipation. The first week of December. So generally it's 2 months after the closing date. Second question. I'm very sorry. Can we postpone a scholarship once it's been awarded? Look, the offer letter does mention that, but it's in exceptional circumstances. So if you're already thinking you won't be able to take the scholarship offer up, I'd encourage you to apply in the next round. And with that, I'll hand over to you. Yes?
What happens if you need to work more than 9 hours?
It's a condition of award, I'm afraid, so it would be a choice you have to make. Sorry, yeah.
If you can,
Yeah, absolutely. So the question was, what happens if you need to work more than 9 hours a week? The answer is, it's a condition of award that you can't, so you need to make a decision if you were made the offer of scholarship.
I have a writing mark.
Sure.
Who's next?
So I was just checking because I'm thinking about applying, but I'm currently taking my honours degree, and so I won't know whether I have the first class honours or not to be eligible. So I was just wondering what you would do in that situation.
Are you a Griffith
Yes.
student? Yeah. So you could make the application with some kind of indication of what perhaps expected qualification might be, but as a Griffith applicant, if you're expecting your results at the end of the year, you could apply with the qualification pending.
Okay, thank you.
Question about with the references, are they the same references that we submit with our application? It says we don't need additional references for scholarship.
Yeah, no, that's correct. So when it comes to applying for the scholarship, so the question was, sorry, about providing references for a scholarship application. There isn't really a separate scholarship application. It's the same online application if you weren't applying for a scholarship. Just there's an area which would say, you know, scholarships, and you'll tick you wish to be considered, and that's really the only additional part of the application. So to answer your question is yes, it would be the same references.
Hi. My understanding is that the issue around work is certain characteristics of the type of work and things like that, that it has to be relevant to your degree or study or something like that. Is that correct? Or off the track?
Well, to a point. So if the work was, look, not really is the answer. So the idea of the scholarship is that it's awarded full time. And so during those kind of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, you're focusing on the research. So that 9 hours condition is pretty strictly enforced.
That doesn't include working outside of those hours, so anything outside of that 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, obviously, at your discretion.
Yes, sorry, to be clear, it's business hours only, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Outside of that, your time is your own. So the question is the weekend okay? Yeah, yes, the weekend would be okay. Sorry.
I was just wondering, looking at the deadlines for applications, the scholarship date's 3rd of October, but then information I found on the Griffith website said for just a straight PhD, it was sometime in December. So are they the same form? And so, yeah, just clarify.
Sorry, yes, absolutely. So the 3rd of October is the deadline for scholarship applications. You can apply after the 3rd of October if you're just applying for candidates who are not scholarship.
Okay, but so if you're applying for both, can't say the word, for both, that's on the 3rd
Yes.
of October?
Yes, scholarship applications 3rd of October, and you apply for candidature at the same time. Yes.
Any other questions? Yeah.
So I have a very basic question. Do we need to have admission first to apply for the scholarship, or it could happen simultaneously?
Yeah, sorry, so just to be absolutely clear, it's the same application. So you'd be applying for candidature, so for admission and scholarship at the same time in the same application.
If you were knocked back for your scholarship, but obviously got into the PhD, can you apply for a scholarship the following year?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, so is there limits on how many times you could apply for the scholarship? How many times you get knocked back?
Not at the moment, but watch this space.
Any other questions?
After October, when is the following round, or is it just once a year?
So 2 rounds a year at the moment. So the dates haven't been announced for next year, but we run an annual round and a mid-year round. So closing day will likely be in April.
Okay, thanks.
And just to that last question, sorry, I should perhaps just give a little bit more detail. So if that's okay, so on the number of applications. Okay.
So there's no limit at present on how many times, but this will be the last round when that occurs, and for any future rounds after that, it will be twice only within a 5-year period. So I guess it is really important to think about your timing for applying for scholarship. As you're a current candidate though, obviously you need to think about whether it's within the first 12 months and you apply as a new candidate, or after that you have that one chance to apply for continuing scholarship scheme.
When roughly do we find out if we're successful with the scholarship and with the program?
So if you apply for scholarship, it will be at the same time. And so in the current rounds, closing date is 3rd of October. Outcomes for scholarship will be made in the first week of December. So it's roughly 2 months after the closing date.
So that's for the scholarship. If you get the scholarship, you're in the program.
That's right.
Right, yeah.
Any other questions?
So Kelly, whilst you're walking, I should just say, if you're not successful with the scholarship, at that same time, we'll give you the option, if you like, your candidature only offer as well, so that can be done immediately too.
Just a question on the English language. It's only for international students or for locals which has been studying here?
So any international candidate needs to meet the English language requirements. There are some rules around exceptions to actually providing a test. So if you've been studying in a research degree in an English-speaking country, and we have those listed in the schedule for a couple of years, then you can be exempted from providing a test, and that's your evidence of meeting English. So we have sort of all the details in the schedule that's on the website too.
Okay, I mean, I'm a local here, like resident here, and a citizen, but I study overseas. I'm studying here now as well. So do I need to?
No, if you're an Australian citizen or permanent resident, then you don't need to provide that evidence of English proficiency.
Hi, is there allocations for each school? As in, there's 5 given to QCA every year?
No, purely merit-based. So all applications will go into will be considered side by side. So no allocations by group or by research centre or school, purely merit-based.
Yeah, so some schools may not qualify that year or something.
Theoretically, there may be some schools that don't receive any scholarships in a given round.
It's the candidate, not the area.
Yeah, it's the candidate, not the area.
I think we'll wrap up that Q&A session now because there's one more person we want to hear from. But Adam will be here after we've heard from our Director of Graduate Research School, and he will be able to ask him follow-up questions.
Thanks, Callie. And I noticed there were still some questions to come. Please be reassured that there will be opportunities to talk to everybody here after the session and have some refreshments as well. So don't worry, your questions will be answered. So I'm very, very quickly going to just change tack for, I guess, the last 5 minutes and talk a bit about your motivations for completing a higher degree by research, degree, a PhD or a master's programme here at Griffith. My name is Sharon Saunders, I'm the director of the graduate school, and I completed my PhD here at Griffith in the business school, that was about 10 years ago now. So I know that you sitting there right now are thinking about one question alongside all the pragmatic questions that you have around how you're going to get funded, and do you meet entry requirements. I imagine another question is, can I do it? Can I do this? And I want to say that embarking on this journey is a intellectual, a emotional, as some of the Dean's research have already talked about, and an incredible financial investment in yourself as well. So I know that there are questions that people have as well, and I'll be available after the formal presentations to talk to anyone who might be thinking, can I do this? And I mean, can I do this in the holistic sense of in my life right now? I completed my PhD, it was an industry-based and linked PhD, so I was actually working with an industry partner, which added a level of complexity. I also had my 2 children while I was completing my PhD. Completed it within 3 years, but taking advantage of the generous conditions of the scholarships here at Griffith as well in terms of maternity leave. So just to say, if you want to talk to me with that angle or that lens, I'm really happy to talk to that too. So in terms of your motivations, and I think this has been alluded to by the Deans already, they may change as you go through your programme. So what you start off thinking you're doing this for may change. But I've worked with a number of PhD and Master's students and candidates across different continents, and I think there are some key themes that come up in terms of your motivations. And I'm just going to outline what some of those are and see if they align with anything that you're thinking about currently. So if you look at the slide there, I'm just talking to those pictures. I think the main one is around the research. Like we've talked about, having a passion in a particular topic, a particular area, wanting to do that research because you're interested and passionate. And as we've already talked about, that's absolutely key motivator that will keep you sustained throughout that journey. The other part, the fingerprint here, is about your unique contribution, and a very exciting part of doing a programme like this is you having the chance to make your unique contribution, however that may play out in your different research field. There is always a question about what will this give me in terms of my employability. We're doing a really exciting project at the moment to connect with all of our graduates from our HDR programmes to see where they've ended up. And when we've done that, I'll be able to stand here next year and tell you more about that data and what it's telling us. But it's really about what career opportunities will this bring for me. And I think this is an interesting one because I think you play a part in that as well. If you have a sense of what your motivation is in terms of your employability, then you can craft your journey along with that in mind, and I think that's an important part. It's a two-way process between you and the university in I guess, making that happen. And that's because doing a programme like this, and again supported by things like our conference travel grants, facilitates travel and networking across international boundaries. So you will meet a number of colleagues and you will travel potentially as part of your programme, and that opens up opportunities if you go into those interactions thinking about what could come from those. Never underestimate the power of somebody you might meet at a conference and how that may play out in your later career in terms of either providing you with a reference or opening a door for you potentially. One of the reasons is for the qualification, for the what that means, and being a doctor is a good motivation. And I did make Kelly change my name on my slide because it didn't have the doctor there. And I'm like, no, I've earned that doctor and I want it on that slide because it is an important motivation. And I guess the other last part, and that's the hands on the slide, is you'll meet great colleagues and collaborators who will be your friends throughout your life. I'm sure if I talk to Sue and any of the deans here, they're going to tell a story of great people that they have met along the way because of their PhD program, potentially what happened before that, and that is really a wonderful motivation for completing a program like this. So before I finish, just because it's been very one way, does anyone want to share what their motivations are, just to finish? Is anyone willing to share why are you here? What is your motivation? Come on, somebody tell me. Yes.
I'll be brave.
Go on, you be brave, front row brave.
I want a legacy.
Okay.
I want my name in print that I've contributed to my field, that is going to be there through generations.
Okay. Really, and that would be, so the motivation was I want a legacy, I want my name in print, I want something that takes, it's beyond me, it's bigger than me, and I think that again is one, I love that to my slide because that's a really great one in terms of a motivation. So thank you all for listening. I think you've heard enough from us. Griffith is a wonderful, supportive environment. You can see here from all the Dean's research, from Sue, from colleagues at the Griffith Graduate Research School, that we're all here to support you as you think about this journey and also when you do undertake it as well. So please feel free to talk with us, ask questions. If we can't answer them on the night, then we'll take your name and we'll get back to you the best we can so that we can answer all the questions you have. So thank you very much, and we will now move into the networking and the conversation starting, where really it's where you get your specific questions answered. So thanks everyone.
There's fresh food being served at the back.
Sorry.